People always ask me, like, how could you possibly like every place that you go to?
The atmosphere, the food, the service.
He started inviting me to a lot of his shoots and his restaurants that he did.
Hello, Marius Mokan here with Discover Sarasota, Florida. I'm a local realtor here in the Sarasota, Florida area. And today we have a special guest here. We have Mike Zegans with Selective Eats. He is a food influencer. Is that correct? How would you describe that?
I don't know. I get into a debate with my brothers fairly regularly with the term blogger, vlogger, influencer, micro-influencer. I guess there's actual categories for those kind of things. I would say technically it would be considered a micro-influencer because an influencer is a certain amount of followers or higher, and then a micro-influencer is a certain number of followers and lower or something like that. I'm not really sure, but sometimes people feel the influencer term is a little bit cringy.
I gotcha. So basically, we had Tanya, which is another well-known influencer here who does a similar sort of style IG account, Instagram account, where you guys kind of go around and you try some new restaurants and things like that. Can you tell us about who you are? And basically, you have moved here from New York, right? From Long Island.
Yeah, grew up on Long Island. Worked most of my life in Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens. Spent most of my time in either the Bronx or Brooklyn mostly, and then Long Island. Obviously, moved here just about now would be 5 months.
Fresh Floridian right here.
I'm a newbie.
So what do you think about Florida? What do you think about, you live in Lakewood Ranch, correct?
I do. Star Farms, Lakewood Ranch. As a matter of fact, Tanya happens to live 2 doors down from me.
That is, such a small world.
So we're kind of neighbors now. And we kind of joked around a little bit that it would be funny that, if we lived in the same area and ended up on the same street, which we did. So it's cool.
Oh my
and
gosh.
She has kids, and her husband, Mike, is great. My name is Mike. His name is Mike. Great guy. And so far, loving it. Florida is fantastic.
Right. And I love what you guys both do. You guys both feature some great restaurants in the area and bring them attention, which they otherwise wouldn't get. So that's really good for our local business owners, which I like to support as well. So thank you so much for doing the work you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I started doing this a very long time ago. I think I started my page February 2019, February 2019. So I've been doing it a while. TikTok really wasn't, around as much back then. But back then it was mostly like food photography.
Oh yeah.
And it was taking pictures of food and whatnot. And
right. People were just posting their food online.
Yeah. And it evolved so much over the last couple of years. It's kind of interesting that I started this as kind of something to do to help my father-in-law. So my father-in-law happens to be in the seafood business. He's a wholesale, fishmonger. So he's worked his entire life in the Fulton fish market, and he's supplied fish from other countries to the fish market. And he also sells to restaurants, which is basically what he does now. Is he buys the fish wholesale out of the Fulton fish market in the Bronx, used to be South Street, in Manhattan, and he sells to restaurants all over New York, and he delivers it to them. He's been doing fish his entire life, and the name of his fish company happens to be Selective Seafood. So I started the page as Selective Seafood, and it was basically to help restaurants that he sells to. So we would typically go out to dinner to his customers because they are also his friends.
What a good business model, because that way it gives them a little bit more advertisement, which in turn he can sell more fish to them and more of his products.
Yeah, and I started trying to use it as a platform to help him reach out to other restaurants that may be in need of somebody that knows what they're doing, knows how to pick out fish, knows how to see the good cuts, know how to fillet it properly, and whatnot. But I would go there and I would take pictures, and then I would reach out to other restaurants. And it's very difficult because the fish business is something that you have to live in.
Mm.
Probably like any business. You can't just do something and then, not pay attention to it. So with fish, a lot of fish is market price. So I would make up a price sheet and I would send it out to somebody, and then 3-4 days later they would send me a message back like, "Hey, how much is salmon?" And then I'd have to call my father-in-law, "Hey, how much is salmon today?" And the price is always changing. So I quickly realized that it was not something that I could help him with because of the the way that pricing changes. It's very difficult when you're not doing it every single day like he is to get involved and to quote customers. So probably early COVID, somebody reaches out to me looking for fish, and it happened to be I think he was an out of work chef at the time doing some furniture delivery. Um, we ended up getting in touch. I put him in touch with my father-in-law. It happened to be he was looking for something personal. My father-in-law, obviously, he can't buy a huge fish just to help somebody out and give him one or two pieces or whatever. So it didn't end up working out, but he became a good friend of mine. So he happened to have been a food influencer at the time, taking pictures, and he started inviting me to a lot of his shoots and his restaurants that he did. Um, and he just got me involved a little bit. I would go with him. He would, kind of, because I always did photography, myself, and I always been interested in it and I enjoyed it. But food is different than taking pictures. So my initial business, what I grew up doing, is tires and automotive. And I had a big family company since I started working for my family probably when I was about 15 years old, and I never got out of it. One thing about the tire business is they say once you get the carbon black in your blood, you never end up getting rid of it. And it pretty much holds true that once you get into the tire and automotive business, you never seem to be able to get out of it. When my family's company closed, I opened up my own company doing aftermarket wheels and high-end cars for big manufacturers like Giovanna Wheels, Dico, who was a good friend, and his wife Peggy, who was actually on the Real Housewives show. I think it was Real Housewives of California. Peggy, um, great people. I ended up closing that business, but because of the wheels, I set up a photo booth in my warehouse and started taking pictures of my own wheels for catalogs. When I met Ricky, who happens to be a great chef, Chef Ricky Rick, right now he's a chef. He actually competed in the World Food Championship in Texas, I believe, doing a lot of big things with a celebrity chef who was on Chopped, Chef Jonathan. They're actually doing a show called Family Kitchen Revivals right now, which is, I think, on YouTube. Not sure what network it's on, but he's went on to do some pretty cool and big things. Happens to be a great friend of mine. He started teaching me about lighting for fish. He started teaching me about lighting for food and how to take food pictures, because back then it was all food pictures. And that kind of platformed into doing videos and reels and editing video.
That's a really interesting story. So, how did you end up in Sarasota of all places? How did that come about? Because, it sounds like you had a lot of things going. You have this following out in New York and your tire business. What made you just sort of just jump ship?
Um, so especially as I got a little bit older, I truly believe that things happen for a reason. And things happen for the way that they're supposed to, good, bad, or indifferent. I've always been interested in moving out of New York. New York's a great place. It's probably one of the food capitals of the world. New York food is amazing. But just living in New York and Long Island, the taxes, the bills, most people in New York will probably agree that
The traffic.
the traffic. By the way, people in Florida that complain about traffic are not from New York. And if you're from New York, you're not complaining about the traffic here, because 20 minutes in the car is going a couple of miles in New York. When it takes 2 to 2.5 hours to drive to Manhattan, when you're only 16 miles away from it, then we could complain about traffic. But I've always been interested in, my wife's cousin moved to Arizona. We went to go check it out. And before I had kids, I traveled a lot, and I'm fully aware that there's a big, beautiful world out there. Um, I've always been interested in living somewhere else. Um, and I kind of always said, pick a place in pick a place anywhere. I'll move there.
That's funny because me and my wife were the same way. So I'm Romanian. She's Russian. I was born in Romania. She was born in Russia. And it's funny how many times, because we moved here from Portland, Oregon in 2021 during the pandemic, but we never really felt like we belonged there. We never felt like we're going to stick around, right? Like we always kept our eyes open for another opportunity. And it's like one of those things where everywhere we would go, people would be like, where are you from? Like in Portland, it always seemed to come up in conversation. And, we never felt like we really belonged there. Like, and people would look at us like, where are you from? Where are you visiting from? We're like, we live here. They're like, really?
Huh.
Yeah. It was like a really, really common question we would get. And, there's times where we, travel to Mexico, to Cancun or all these places. And we're like, hey, what if we lived out here, or, just wherever we would look, because we both came from different countries. So for us, it's really easy to just say, all right, let's pack up and go, just because we've done it before and we've seen that. Right. And even as a child, we move around a lot and, I've experienced a whole lot of that. So for me, it's not really a big deal, but for a lot of people, they just can't see themselves leaving their town. I've known so many people that have never even left the state. They've never gone over the state border.
Look, it's definitely scary. I mean,
Absolutely.
it does take a lot of guts to load up and just say,
Yeah.
I'm moving. Leave everything that you've ever known.
It's risky.
It's definitely it's risky. It's scary, especially as a parent.
Yeah.
For me, I could do anything. It's about the kids, and
right.
So I'm married. I've been married almost 20 years. Come June, and my wife will say, when people ask how long you've been married, we'll kind of both just say a very long time.
I'm going on 16.
Nice, congratulations.
Yeah.
I have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old. So, most of this process, I felt a lot more confident than my wife did about it because I know my kids and I know how good they are and how friendly they are and how resilient. And obviously, internally,
right.
I definitely worried, but my wife externally worried because as a mom, that's what your job is to worry about your kids. Pulling my son, my 9-year-old was a little bit less of a concern because he's younger and literally will just swim up to somebody or walk up to somebody and be like, hey, how you doing? I'm Justin. Nice to meet you.
He ain't going nowhere, right? He's got his friends, he's got his life, right?
And we lived in Bethpage, which is a great town, and we were very lucky. We were very lucky to live in a town where my son had the same friends the day he left that he had, for the most part, the day he was born. And his friend group were kids that were friends at 1 year old, 2 years old, straight through to the teenage years. So that was, in theory, it was up until the week that we actually did move. Everything was fine, and the week we moved ended up going nuclear. Full blown meltdowns. Even though we knew for quite a while that we were going to move.
It just wasn't real yet.
I think until you're moving stuff out of your house, and getting ready to actually say goodbye to people, it's less real, But
at what point did it just become so real? Like, well, we're doing this, like we're done. Was it when you sold the house? Was it when you shipped all your stuff?
It wasn't even when we sold the house because we ended up selling our house, and the guy that bought my house wasn't moving in, so we ended up renting it back from him. For the last 3 months that we were in New York. So
it didn't really change the way you were living.
No,
it didn't seem like real. Like, this isn't my house anymore. It didn't seem that way. Yeah,
we closed, and I came home that night from work, and it was like still my house. It's not my house, but it's still my house.
Right.
I think that last week was the only time that it really became real, because that's when the moving trucks come and they move everything out of there.
Right.
And some of our friends had some parties for us, and there was a lot of tears and a lot of goodbyes, and that's when it really became hard, because everything was smiles up until the very end. And then when that last week, when it's like, wow, we're really leaving and we're moving. then it became real. But I have family in Florida, so
Right.
my aunt, my uncle, my cousin, and my other cousin who's getting ready to, I believe, move back here as well. They're on the east coast of Florida in the Boca area.
Mhm.
So I've always come to Florida. I've always visited Florida. This is my first time living here. Um, my son plays soccer and baseball, but we ended up in the Super Y finals a couple years in a row, and it's in Tampa.
Mm.
And we spent a decent amount of time in Tampa, and then going to Clearwater. And my wife and I, we kind of fell in love with this west coast of Florida. Just such a cool area. It's
It's so
great.
different from the East
It
Coast.
really is.
Oh my gosh, it's night and day. It's like a different country. And that's what we did. We actually flew into Florida. We flew into Fort Lauderdale. We picked out 3 days that we were just going to we're going to stay in these 3 spots. But then after that, we said, we're going to leave it open. If someone tells us like, let's go check out this area, or, we just drove the coastline of Florida because we knew we wanted to be by the coast. We're not going to live in the middle of the state if we're moving to Florida. Right.
Absolutely.
So once we got to the West Coast, it was just like, this is it. There's no way we're going back to the other side because, if you're a surfer or you really like to do these more extreme water sports, I can see the benefit of living in the Miami side or Fort Lauderdale, Boca Royale, or, those areas. But for us, like, we want the clear blue turquoise water. I don't want some riptide taking my kid, or, we have like less sharks on the other side. And, it's, for the most part, you're not really too scared. The only incident we've ever had was a jellyfish stung me and my daughter.
Ooh, okay.
But 30 minutes later, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's nothing. We don't have like the poisonous ones or anything. But like for us, it just felt like we've arrived. We're here.
Yeah.
I remember driving into Sarasota and we're like, yeah, we can do this. So basically we went back home, put the house on the market, we sold all of our stuff basically.
I did the same thing.
Why would you bring old furniture? Because, it's funny that I saw a lot of stuff, a lot of homes in Lakewood Ranch, Start Farms, where you live, and all these other developments. And what we have found is that people will spend $10,000+ moving all this stuff. They'll put it in storage. Then they're paying storage fees. Then they bring it, their house is done, they're ready to go, and they bring it in and they go, no, this is like dated, or it doesn't fit correctly. That couch will never, the couch ain't going to fit the right way it fit in the old space, right? So what's wild is that you can drive down these streets and you can find practically new furniture. They put it out at the street.
Yeah.
And they spent all that money bringing it over here.
We wanted to start over fresh.
That's what we did.
When I did my house in New York, 14, let's say 10 to 14 years ago.
Right.
Styles are different. Everything changes. My house in New York was very brown tones, brown couch, leather couch. Coming out here, it's whites and it's sunny and it's just the whole theme. The whole theme is different here. Yeah. So we didn't want to spend that kind of money to move couches that we were ultimately going to want to get rid of.
Well, people don't realize that what's a couch worth? What's a used couch worth?
Yeah.
Look at Marketplace. That's what the market is for a used couch or a used coffee table, whatever, right? So, you can find a lot of that stuff here as well if you want to be a little more thrifty or whatever. But if you look at the architectural style of Florida, like you said, it's a totally different color palette. You've got the more colonial style, or what sort of architectural in Florida, in Long Island, like
there's so many
craftsmen.
There's so many different houses. I had a split. There's colonials. There's ranches. There's pretty much every house that you could possibly want on Long Island. There's a neighborhood or an area for that. But yeah, we did the same thing. We got rid of everything, and this whole journey was actually very interesting. And that's why I say, like, I think things sometimes happen for a reason, the way that they're supposed to, because I said for a long time, like, I would always, my in-laws, I think maybe 10 years ago, before I started the company that I'm with now, I said to my wife, I said, let's get out of New York. And at the time, my father-in-law, who still has his business in New York, was, I think he was probably around 60 at the time, 61 or something like that. And he wasn't ready to move. And so my wife is an only child. I have two brothers. grew up in a big house with a lot of people all the time. My wife's an only child, so um, my wife grew up in a mother-daughter. So typical Italian, grew up with my wife grew up with her grandparents living in the same house. Um, m- leaving my wife leaving her parents and moving to a different state was something that was never going to happen. Vice versa, my in-laws were not going anywhere without my wife as their only child. They're super close to my kids. As a matter of fact, my 14-year-old calls my in-laws. Well, prior to them moving down to, so my in-laws moved next door to us. They live in Lakewood Ranch. They built the house next door to me.
Inevitably, the family follows. Like
Yes.
it's happened to us. You know, my parents are here. My wife's parents are here. We've got so much family here now that we don't have to go anywhere for the holidays. Like we used to have to like travel and stuff, but now we're like, we have, and I've got more family coming in time. Like my brother bought a second home that he's actually brought down the studs. Now he's like, you know what? I'm just going to tear it down. I'm going to rebuild it. Because, it's like a long-term plan.
Construction never stops. You're always coming up with ideas and things to do.
And then my sister just announced, hey, we just bought a new house here in, Charlotte, but give us 2 years. We'll be there. Yeah. I was like, yeah. So basically just wait and they'll come down for a few vacations and they're like, oh, this is how you really live. Okay.
Yeah. So I said to I must have said half a dozen times, give or take, let's move somewhere else, anywhere else.
Yeah.
And my in-laws didn't want to move. It wasn't time. They weren't ready. So it was just always kind of pushed off.
It's never the right time.
No, until it is.
Until
But,
it is, yeah.
So probably, I'm going to say probably 2 to 3 years ago, we're on the couch and we have so one of my wife and my wife and I's good friend, who lived in the same town as us, Bethpage, very similar situation, like they lived in other places and, my wife's friend Anna always said, that she wanted to move out of New York as well. So they were always interested in relocating. And maybe 2.5 years ago, we were on the couch and watching TV. It was later at night, and my wife's friend Anna called her up, and I think she FaceTimed her, and she was here in Lakewood Ranch visiting. And it was Christmas in July. She was at UTC. She FaceTimes her, and of course my wife was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool. Like, wow, it's beautiful. Like whatever."
Have you guys been over there right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's decked out right now
It's
for Christmas.
So cool.
Now they just put up that new Moat Marine.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they just keep adding more and more and more awesome things to do as a family. So because Sarasota used to be an old folks town, and they didn't have very many parks. They didn't have very many family friendly things. And now in the last couple of years, they just keep everything's brand new infrastructure, brand new parks, brand new, aquariums, theme parks.
That aquarium is going to be cool.
It's done.
It's done?
It's done. You can go now.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's like so modern and beautiful. And I don't know if you guys are a part of that Step Up program. So do your kids go to the private school or do they do?
So my 14-year-old goes to Lakewood Ranch High.
Yeah.
And my younger son goes to the new school they just opened up because he's 9. He goes to the new one that's right outside of Star Farms.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So you got really good schools there, amazing schools and amazing sports programs.
Yes, we're just getting into that. I know my son will be trying out for the high school baseball team. Baseball is definitely different down here. I'll tell you that much.
So when I moved down here, oh, sorry to cut you off, but when I moved down here, how there's that Premier Sports campus that wasn't there.
Okay.
So what happened was a bunch of people were moving down at like a mass exodus from other places during COVID, and they had to turn away kids from sports.
Okay.
So then they said, oh my gosh, we got to do something. Like we've got a bunch of homes coming in. We didn't anticipate so many families coming so quickly. We need to do something. So they built out that sports complex, and that thing is packed.
It's incredible.
All the time. So now there's a lot more opportunities for soccer, baseball, football, all that good stuff. Well, that's something to think about when you're considering moving to an area, right? So when I help people come, relocate to the area. Typically, they're looking at IMG. So IMGs typically, that's like top of their list. They're like, we're moving down because my kid's in that soccer program, or
Yeah.
that's typically what they're doing.
And IMG is incredible.
And IMG is incredible.
But it is
top
30
notch.
minutes.
Yeah.
So even to join a team like that, to drive 30 minutes for practice and 30 minutes back, and then games on the weekend, it becomes challenging.
And that's exactly what I do. I figure out, why do people want to move here? And then I put them right there where they need to be, right? So West Bradenton is where you got to be. You got to be up in that, as far west as, before you get to Anna Maria Island.
Yeah.
That's typically where you got, Robinson's Preserve, all that. And they're building an incredible new development called Seaflower.
Okay.
It's brand new development that they're building out there. It's one of a kind because, obviously back in the day, that's where they built out first, back 100 years ago or whenever it was, they built the town out closest to the water. And things kind of moved out east, gradually grew out that way. So now that's how we have Lakewood Ranch. But I totally see your point. That's typically if you're looking at sports, I will take you out to West Bradenton because you're looking at IMG. Yeah. But what you're experiencing the frontier, you're among the first, you're they still have 25 more years to build in Lakewood Ranch.
It's crazy.
25 more years. So you're in it for the long haul. So there's going to be a lot more people moving out here in your area. The sports are just going to get better and better. Yeah. But you're coming from New York where everything's 500 years old.
Yeah. Soccer seems like it's a little bit more to figure out because, like a 14-year-old plays with a 14-year-old for the most part. So we did check, we recently, my son has made friends and a lot of them are soccer kids. He ended up checking out a couple of different teams, and I think he got an invite to play, and I think he chose. So I think he's going to join the DME family. So he's going to play DME, and they practice a lot at Premier Sports. What is that? Premier
complex,
Sports Complex, which is incredible. 140 acres, 23 fields, or something like that. It's pretty incredible.
It's incredible that they have this massive master, plan development going on. Biggest in the country, but they leave so much green space for all this. Yeah. Because they're losing out on billions of dollars, in real estate, right?
Yeah.
That they potentially could be making, but they're leaving a lot because, you can't just move out west that way, or I'm sorry, east that way and have nothing, right? Like your community is incredible. You've got a resort style community.
Yeah. I think several amenity centers, pools, restaurant, pool bar,
coffee
2 gyms, coffee shop. And it's, like I was saying earlier, like you almost don't even need, like I haven't done so much here in the 5 months I've been here because you almost don't even need to leave your community.
Exactly. They've got that whole like live, play, eat here, whatever, so they've got that motto.
Lifestyle director and things going on and golf cart rides and
exactly. Like that's why
food trucks.
People buy a golf cart just to get around these communities because you've got everything there. You'll see the families pulling up to the beach, or I'm sorry, to a resort style pool with their golf cart. They've got their cooler and everything and their Bluetooth speaker and, they're hanging out by the pool. Right.
Yeah.
And you just don't have to leave. It's just incredible.
Yeah. No, it's very cool.
And the little downtown hubs they have around town, Waterside, Main Street,
car shows at Main Street, Waterside.
And you've visited a bunch of those restaurants UTC, at Waterside.
Waterside's great. I mean, listen, everything so far is great. But I'll circle back real quick because I didn't finish telling you how I ended up here. So we were on the couch. My wife's friend called her and FaceTimed her from UTC, and it was beautiful. And we both kind of were like, like my wife was like, looks great. It's awesome. And they hang up, and we're on the couch, and maybe an hour goes by, half an hour, and I see my wife on the couch, and she's on her phone, and she's just scrolling. And I kind of, after a while, I look over, and I go, what's going on over there? What are you doing?
She's looking at houses?
She goes, I looked up Lakewood Ranch on TikTok.
Oh, okay.
And I go, okay. She goes, this is incredible. She goes, do people really live like this? And I kind of gave her like a little bit of a sarcastic look. I'm like, because I've said several times, like there's a lot of places in this world, to live. And I kind of sarcastically look at her and gave her like the, Yeah, people do live like this all the time, just not us. And being that I've said it a couple of times, I took this all with a grain of salt. And she goes, "We should go look at it." And in all seriousness, I just looked at her and go, "No, thanks." And she was kind of like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm offering to go look at it. We should go look at it." And I go, "Rather not, like, don't make me," and it was kind of along the line of like, "Don't make me go look at another place or fall in love with somewhere that I'm not going to ultimately be able to move to, because your parents aren't going to want to move and whatnot." And, I kind of brushed it off, and we sat there for a while, and she kept scrolling. And I don't know what popped into my head, but I kind of said, the kids were off of school in the upcoming weeks. And I think it just dawned on me, and I kind of looked at her and I go, "I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. Kids are off of school in a couple of weeks. I'll book a flight. I'll rent a house in Lakewood Ranch. I'll book a car. I'll stay home and watch the kids for 5 days. You go with your parents. You three go. If you come back with your parents and you tell me that your parents love it and you love it, and this is somewhere that you can move and your parents would come with us, because I know you won't move without your parents," I said, "I'll go look at it." I said, "As a matter of fact, I'll buy it and move here sight unseen."
You were like, you thought she just needed to get out of her system, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I figured that like she was going to come down here. Like I knew that my wife would like it. I didn't. The big question was my in-laws. He's my father-in-law and my mother-in-law are getting a little bit older, and he still works for himself. He still gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning and drives to the Bronx from Long Island and goes to the Fulton Fish Market, and then comes home and takes a nap and makes deliveries to restaurants, and then goes around collecting money. He's a one-man operation. He does all his own business. He's probably the hardest working guy I've ever met in my life. Second, probably right above my boss. What would he do here? Can he retire? He's not a retirement guy. He's going to have to do something.
That's like my parents.
So that was my biggest concern is, like, I knew my wife wouldn't move here without her parents. And I knew in my heart that my father-in-law was not like, let's move to Florida and I could scale back. Like he's always
Right.
at 72 years old. He's still trying to figure out, like new business ideas or things that he could do to make more money. Not typically what you would find from a 72-year-old.
Mhm.
Most people are just like, when can I retire?
Right.
Not
Right.
my father-in-law. He would, if it was up to him, he would work until the day he died.
That was my biggest concern with my parents was, they ran elderly care facilities, and we build them and, fill them with occupancy and everything, and, run those. And they did that for like over 30 years, no vacations,
Yeah.
nothing. They were just like, we came here as immigrants. We just
Yeah.
don't know anything else but work. Right. So I'm like, how do I take them from 100 miles an hour to 0
Yeah.
overnight? And I was like, really, really thinking that it was going to affect their mental health, because I've seen them when they're not busy, when they're not doing, they'll start to bicker. They'll start to like,
They go stir crazy.
yeah,
It's like
exactly.
they need something to do.
Exactly. That was our biggest concern, is we're going to bring them out here. They're going to be in paradise. They're going to love it for like a week, but then it's just like going to vacation anywhere else. Right.
Yeah.
After a while, you're like, time to go back home and,
Yeah.
Get back at it. Right.
I see glimpses of that. I see glimpses of that with my father-in-law when he's here. Especially when he loves it and everything's great, and then he'll like the light switch will go on and it'll be like he's going crazy or something like that.
And he's starting to talk about businesses, and
then it'll kind of simmer down a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the more times he goes back and forth, because right now he's in New York, he comes back on Thursday, and then he's going to be here for a while. I think the more that he does that, the more he'll want to figure out something to do here.
You know what my parents did? So they bought rental properties,
Okay.
and they do all of the maintenances and property management, and they go over there and like cut the grass and all this stuff,
Yeah.
even though we have it in the lease that the tenant's responsible for cutting the grass.
Yeah.
They're like, they call me Mario. They're like, Mario, call the tenants and tell them we come over. Basically, oh my gosh, they love my parents, because my parents will bring like gift baskets and
Mhm.
leave it in the house randomly to the tenants, and they never want to leave.
Yeah.
And they'll the tree needs to get cut.
Yeah.
So they'll bring out the tree guy. They look at everything. This fence, they'll rebuild the fence, or they'll before you know it, they're keeping themselves busy
Yeah.
all the time before you know it.
I have no doubt that my
Yeah.
father will figure it out. I mean, obviously he sold his house too, so his house is here.
Yeah.
And he'll figure it out. But
Right.
my wife took me I didn't even think she was going to get to the plane because I thought she was going to talk to her parents and they were going to be like, it's not the right time, or we can't, we can't take the weekend off or something like that, or whatever it was. But a day or two later, she was like, my parents said okay. So I booked the flight, I rented the house, and they went down here. And I watched the kids for 5 days. And she came back, and she was like, not only did she love it, but my in-laws I guess they loved it or they liked it enough to say, if you guys move here, we'll move with you.
Mm.
And then we followed it up by this was such a long shot. It really was, because my son started high school this year. So when we first started looking at it, it was just a what if. They came down here and liked it. Then we took a vacation and we came down here and spent a week. We went out to dinner, see if we really liked the area, then we did another extended weekend here, and my wife started looking into schools and sports programs and, communities. Is it going to be Star Farms or Sweetwater or Lorraine Lakes or whatever? And our realtor happened to be a younger guy, George Scarpius, and he is from Massapequa, which is a couple towns away from where we are. He ended up
small world.
Small world. He ended up working. As a matter of fact, even smaller, he ended up getting married to his wife, I believe the same day and in the same place as me and my wife got married, my wife and I.
How did that happen?
We have no idea. But his anniversary, I believe, is the exact same anniversary as mine. We both got married at the Watermill. We were downstairs and he was upstairs, or vice versa. I'm not 100% sure.
So it's a big property.
Crazy. It was a big catering hall, the Watermill on Long Island, I think Smithtown. My father-in-law was friends with the owner, and we just happened to be having a conversation. And it was like, it's my anniversary. It's your anniversary. We realized that we got married the same day, the same place. That we both got married the same day at the same place. And he only lived a couple towns away from us. He ended up to be our realtor. And after getting to know my wife a little bit, he directed us into where he thought we would fit best. And that's how we ended up here.
That's funny, because I run into people from Oregon. That's 3,000 miles away, right? Mm-hmm. I've run into so many of people just randomly.
Yeah.
One of my good childhood friends, actually, high school friends. I was going to a church, and it was a startup. It was like a church plant, very small community, maybe 50 people or so. And then he came one day and I just ran into him. And then before you know it, I'm like, are you moving to Florida? He's like, yeah. And then I ended up helping him buy a house, helping him buy and sell 2 investment properties. And, now he lives really close to me. And it's really funny because we post a lot, going out boating and this and that. And people that have known us from back in the day, like, oh, you guys are living together in Florida. Your families are living together. So it's kind of cool how, Florida has just become such a hub for people, just a destination for people to move to.
Yeah. No, and like I said, there was, aside from just liking it, there's so many things that had to happen in the universe for us to be able to actually move here.
All the stars had to align and all that.
It really did. It's really wild that, after taking a couple vacations here and realizing how much we liked it and that we wanted to try and make this work, then you meet with the builder, pick out a house. We had to find a house that we liked that was in our price range. We had to find a house that my in-laws liked that they would build next door to us, that they liked that was in their price range. Then once we picked that out, then they had to build the house in the right time frame, because if we didn't do this before my son went to high school, we probably wouldn't have done it, because I wouldn't have pulled him out after his first year of high school or mid-high school to move across the country.
That timing is so critical for sure.
So they called us up, and I didn't believe that this was happening. I mean, I wanted it to happen, but this wasn't happening until maybe 4 months before it actually, 4 to 5 months before it actually happened, because they were supposed to build the house that we wanted on one street, which fit our timeline. Then they called us up. They're like, the builder decided not to do it on this street. We're going to have to wait. So even, you know, 8 months before, 9 months before, or whatever it was, this was all so up in the air, because what if they don't build the house that we want in the time frame? What are we going to do? We're going to rent for 6 months. We're going to rent for a year. Until the day that they called us up and they're like, we're going to build the house. We're going to do it on this block. And within a day, it was like the
You pull the
contracts were
trigger.
there. And it was like, you know, and I remember they sent the stuff over, and my wife looked at me and she was like, are we really doing this? And I'm like,
Now or never.
the email's here. I was like, I either sign it or I don't. And she was like, she kind of looked at me. She's like, you sure we're making the right decision? And I think I remember, and she'll, believe me, she'll correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I think I signed it and did all the DocuSigns or whatever, and I sent it back, and I kind of looked at her. I'm like, well, it's done. And she was like, okay,
Yeah.
we're really doing this.
Well, people don't realize that sometimes if you don't, it really happens that fast. Sometimes you have to pull the trigger, or somebody else is going to buy that house, and who knows when that model will become available. Because
well, that's
sometimes,
exactly what it was. There was somebody else on the waiting list before. I'm sorry, someone on the waiting list for our house after us. So it was kind of like,
it's a first
it
come
was the same
first
thing.
serve.
It was like,
Yeah.
if you're ready, cool. If not, we can move on to the next person.
And then your parents had to pull the trigger on the one next door.
Exactly.
And it had to happen like that, or otherwise, when are you guys going to get those two models side by side again?
Yeah, it was like we had to do it together or not at all. And it just worked out. We ended up moving in right before we started high school, and we planned it to be down here. We actually rented for a couple of months because our house wasn't supposed to be ready until September,
Mhm.
and the kids start earlier here than in New York. So we rented, and we ended up, everything just fell into place. So when I say everything, there's so many things that had to happen for us to actually be here. And even throughout the process, my wife was kind of like, like, when are you, like, what are you going to do about work? And like, that was my biggest thing, because I grew up in a family company. I went to work for somebody else, and ultimately I ended up at a company called Tire Town in New York, which has 3 retail locations in Corona, Long Island City, and Freeport, and our warehouse and our main wholesale business is in Freeport. Not very often can people say that they love what they do, but after working for my family and ultimately owning my own business, and then going to work for one of my competitors, and now at Tire Town, I love what I do. And that was my biggest problem of moving throughout the whole process, is what I'm going to do. Because I love where I was. I love the people that I worked with. My boss is like family. He's probably one of the greatest guys I know, him and his wife, Juan and Anna. They're just fantastic people. And to not be with them would have been very challenging. And just to show you what a great guy he is, when I finally did sign the contract, and it was time to sit down with my boss and tell him that, we drastically pulled this trigger last minute. We sat down, and I told him that I was moving to Florida, and what I was doing for work and what my plans weren't even in the top 10 questions he asked me. And as an owner of a company, if one of your main employees or someone that you rely on and you count on, say, hey, I'm moving across the country, most people internally would be like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And that wasn't even a concern of his. It was like, wow, I'm so happy for you. This is going to be great for you, your family, your kids are going to be so happy. I can't wait to come visit you.
Wow.
And that's the kind of guy he is. And after a while, like that, like it finally came up, and it was like, what are your plans for work? And I had none. I signed a contract on a house without even a plan of what I was going to do for work, because that was the toughest part of this whole entire decision, was what I'm going to do. And in my head, I knew that I could do what I do from anywhere. But me thinking that it works doesn't make somebody else think that it works. So, and
they're going to think it's not the same. You're not going to be as available.
Yeah. And I said, I have no plan. When he asked me what I was doing, I said, he knows. And, I said, I'm here because I love being here. And that would be the hardest thing that I would have to do, would be not to work here. And without batting an eye or skipping a beat, he looked at me and goes, oh, we'll work it out. And to the point where it didn't even register with me that I kept on talking after he said, well, don't worry about it. We'll work it out. And he was kind of like, wait, did you hear me? You know, like I said, we'll work it out. And he's like, it'll work. And I go, okay. And he was kind of like, you know how I know that it'll work? And I go, no, how do you know? You know? And he was like, so one of our good friends, Joel at BC, his main guy, Adam, who does similar to what I do for my company, he goes, Adam lives in Florida. And I go, what are you talking about? Adam lives. I talk to him all the time. Like, how do I not know that Adam lives in Florida?
Never came up.
Never came up. You know, I call him, he answers the phone. I ask him a question. He gives me an answer.
You know, that's the beauty about, you know, Florida. That's why everything blew up the way it did here, is because remote work made it all happen.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for remote work, it wouldn't spark everything up. So, you know, now you've got a lot more going on here, but in the beginning, it was the remote work that made it possible for anyone to just.
Same thing with a lot of areas. And I get the rub, and I understand the corporate concern, because that's what I have to deal with as well. Is I'm sure that there's a very big part of the population or people that work remote that are less effective working remote. If you're working at your kitchen table or you don't have a dedicated office, are you going to sign on? Unless you work for a big company that has, you know, like a computer system where you have to log on and you have to be at your desk and you have to be at a certain place at a certain time answering calls with schematics on how many calls you answered for the day. If you work for a smaller company that doesn't have that kind of access, are you going to be as effective? Or are you going to be, you know, doing other things when you're supposed to be at your desk and working? For me, as a business owner, I grew up in a family business. One thing most people will know about working with family and for family is nobody works harder than when you have to work for your family, because you're expected to do more. It's just not in my nature to not. And to be honest with you, I am working more here than I worked in New York. I'm working more hours and I'm doing more working from my office in my house than I did working in New York in the office, because I'm not driving to the office. I'm not saying good morning to everybody. I'm not having a cup of coffee. I'm not you know, there's no conversation during the day.
So you're more locked in, and you're basic. You have more time to like dedicate to actual work rather than the commute, the conversations that aren't relevant to your job, and
my timing is totally different here.
That filler,
you know, in New York, I would have to drop my son off at school, or I would have to wait until he left and, you know, then head into my office. Here, high school in Lakewood Ranch starts earlier. And that pickup line, anybody that knows that pickup line at Lakewood Ranch High School, you got to get there early. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning here. I'm out the door by 6:45 with my son, driving him to high school, drop him off at high school. I get home. I'm actually at my desk having my coffee before they even open the doors in the morning in the office. And I would never even be there when they opened the doors, because I was still doing stuff in New York. So I'm starting work earlier than I would in New York. And I'm working later because I don't have to leave to drive home. So I'm spending more time. And if anybody has any question or I want to do something, my office is right upstairs. If I want to do something, I can just walk upstairs and spend 10 minutes at my computer and do some work. So I'm way more efficient. I'm way more effective, and I'm working even more here. And it's great. And I have
this. You're giving people a really good incentive to go tell their boss, "Hey, I got to move to Florida. I'm going to be way more efficient."
Listen, absolutely. But if you're going to do it, make sure you do it. You know,
right.
You know, don't do it, and then, you know, don't take the move and then slack off and spend the day at the pool instead.
Right. That's easy to do. You have the discipline that a lot of people may not have.
And that's probably the rub, and that's the downside of people working remote. And with any company, one person ruins it for everybody. So all it takes is one or two people or a handful of people to do, you know, in a bigger company, to be in a remote situation, to not do what they're supposed to do. And then all of a sudden it's like it doesn't work for everybody. So if people are going to do it, put the work in.
That's why there's rules, right? Right. Yeah. Because somebody did something and then a rule came into play, right? So
especially with bigger companies, you know, like if there's not a rule, then there's no rule. So,
yeah, I know a guy that works for Google, and they're telling a bunch of people to go back to work, and you know, for him that would be San Francisco.
Yeah,
and he lives here. he's like I'm gonna have to quit my job. He's like, I'm not going back to I'm not going back there. So
and that probably got messed up by one, two, or a handful of people not doing what they're supposed to do. And now all of a sudden it's a company rule. Listen, everyone's got to come back to the office. So
Right. They put everybody in that box. Yeah.
yeah, so people don't always realize that one person affects many.
Right. So with all this going on with your full-time job that you have, that's like your main bread and butter, your main money maker is the tire industry. What do you see next for Selective Eats?
I don't really know, I mean, obviously I love doing it. My job is like my job and my career is obviously my focus always, because that's what pays my bills and that's what I enjoy doing. Um, the food stuff, I love it. I love content creation. For me,
Your creative outlet?
yeah, I mean, I enjoy editing videos and stuff like that. And listen, like I said, I consider myself a little bit older than a lot of people that do this. Like a lot of times you find a lot of these social media people that try and do food or any avenue, or younger people, younger kids, that want to be in the media business, especially in New York. You find a lot of younger people that want to platform this into working for a media company or doing something in, management or, hospitality. Um, I got into this to help my father-in-law, which didn't obviously go the way that I wanted to, but I never would have imagined, because obviously I'm a little bit older. I grew up before, I grew up in a time with dial-up modems and AOL and instant messenger. So
MySpace?
MySpace, um, even before MySpace. But
How old are you?
I am 49.
What?
Yeah,
I thought you were my age. I'm 38.
49. Yep. So,
You look good.
thank you. Thank you. You know, it, when I started doing this, there was a lot of, before reels and videos and, like real creativeness. It was a lot of pictures. And I never would have imagined in a million years that as an older guy, that I would have made so many friendships and connections with some of the most amazing people through what I would consider a silly app. Back when I first started doing it, Instagram seemed like it was just such a joke. Like for me, it was like, what am I really doing with this? Especially when I made the jump from Selective Seafood, because that was originally my page was Selective Seafood, and spending time with my friend Ricky. I would take pictures of a great pork chop or a lamb chop or a steak, and I would look at him and go, I'm a seafood page. What am I supposed to do with all this? And he was the one that convinced me and said, just change the name of your page and just go full foodie. And I was like, is that even something that's cool? Like, could I even do that? I don't know the rules of social media.
You're like, will I lose people? Or
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And he said, like absolutely 100%, I would do it. And I remember I put out a poll, on my feed or whatever, like, should I change my name and just go full foodie? And overwhelmingly, like the people that I've met were like absolutely 100%. So I did it. And I never would have imagined that I would have made so many friendships from a silly food page, as I would have called it back when I first started it, a silly food page, like, what am I doing? I'm posting pictures of food.
right.
How ridiculous must I be? And, fast forward, like the first person I met was Ricky. He's still a friend. We still talk on the phone. And I've met some amazing people that opened their doors when I had no followers. So for me, I try and follow back anybody that's in the same industry as me. Regardless of whether you have 500 followers or 50,000 followers, I don't
Yeah.
think followers matters. If you're a good person and you're creative and you want to do this, start a page. Just do it. You're going to meet people along the way. Josh and Clarissa from Fire Foods. I met them early on. I went to their wedding. These are friends of mine, people that I call up on the phone. And I've gotten to work with and meet some absolutely amazing people that some are pioneers of doing this. Agencies, people that handle hundreds of restaurants and work with teams of people that their job is to try and promote these businesses. I think Florida itself is a little bit more behind and I'm not saying that in a bad way.
Absolutely.
I think that we're behind major markets like New York, California, or certain other big markets, maybe Miami, Tampa, maybe even. But I think Sarasota needs to step their social media game up, not on our side, but the restaurant side. It seems like they're less concerned with social media. And, when I work with a restaurant, my job is to promote the restaurant. And I have to try and promote it in a authentic way. Um, you know, which makes it difficult because what what I try and people always ask me like, how could you possibly like every place that you go to? And the answer, I mean, who am I to discourage anybody from going to a place? So if I go to a place and I don't love it, I'll decline to post it. If I really have a bad experience, I will never go out there and say anything negative about anybody because I had a restaurant with my father-in-law for a couple of years as well, and I know how hard the restaurant business is. Employees not coming in, the chef doesn't show up, you're short staffed, your food delivery didn't come in, they left something off. There's a million things that go wrong in a restaurant every single day. Um, which is also why, like you get onto some of these groups and these forums and people are out there bashing restaurants after one bad experience. I think there was a post I read the other day. Someone went to a place, I forgot exactly what it was, but they were like, been there a ton of times, always great. Went there last night, horrendous. Bashed everything about their experience. You've been there several times and it's always great. And you went once and last night was not good. And now people read that and maybe you're discouraging somebody else from going to visit. Maybe the chef called out sick. Maybe they're
I think the
short
best thing
staffed.
to do is let them know.
Yeah, like
Let
go to
the
the
management know.
manager, and
Yeah.
if they don't help, go to the owner. But restaurant business is not easy. That's for sure.
Especially to be consistent day after day after day.
Yeah, listen, you go for dinner, all you see is the dinner shift. You got to realize that people are there. They get there early. They have to clean up the restaurant. They have to food prep for the day. They have to set the tables. They have to make sure that the bar is stocked up well. And then when you go home after dinner, even if you're the last table, people are staying there for another hour or two to clean up the restaurant and now get stuff ready for the next day. People that are in the restaurant business, my wife's family, all own restaurants in North Carolina. They live in their restaurants. They're there holidays, nights, weekends. They're away from their family. And I got to meet and work with some, especially in New York. I mean, probably the first guy to open up his doors to me, one of the greatest guys I know. And it's funny because anybody could check out his page, and people bash him all the time because of his personality. Is a place called Phil's Pizza in Syosset. Anthony's probably one of the best dudes. He is absolutely viral, especially now. He's well over 100,000 followers. He gets recognized out in public, and it's because he does these skits with his partner where he just basically does the most outrageous stuff that restaurant owners and people that work in restaurants actually deal with on an everyday basis. The phone calls. Hey, are you opened? No, I'm just here because I want to be. I'm just here for the hell of it. But he's absolutely hysterical, and he's being himself. And people get on there and they bash him because they're like, "You're so rude to customers." It's a skit, like he's great. But I got to work with him, and he's an awesome dude. Certain places like that pioneer things and that are always changing things and really paying attention to, like Louis Sell at Rob Key's and Frank from 1653, Locali in Patchogue. Some of my favorite places, and it's not just because the food is great. For me, when I go to a place, it's not just, is this food really good? It's how do I feel when I'm there? Because I feel like when you go out to dinner, a bad place can make good food not as good. Vice versa, a great place can make food that's good great. It's how do you feel when you go out to dinner? Is it inviting? Are the people there friendly? Are they smiling? Are they happy to see you? And those places on Long Island, and in New York that I've been to, some of my favorite places are because when you're there, you feel like you're at home. And I think more people need to know about that. And that's the tough part about what we do is I have to be authentic on what I do. And what people don't understand sometimes of my experience, they'll go, oh, I went there and I didn't like it. My taste is different than your taste. So how am I right? You're wrong, or vice versa. Like we could both be right. I could go to a place and love it. You could go to a place and not love it. That's the great part about having that many restaurants to go to. People could go to places that they enjoy going to. Um, you know, my job is when I'm going and someone invites me in and asks me to do a review, I'm getting the best the place has to offer, right? They know I'm coming. They know I'm making a video. They're going to make sure that the plate is that everything's plated properly, that the food is cooked to order, that it's cooked as good as they possibly can. So if I go to a place and I take a video and I can only speak on behalf of what I've experienced. I can't speak on what your Friday night experience is going to be when they're short staffed or or they're at their busiest. So it's all subjectable. But again, who am I? What classification or like who am I to go out there and say anything negative about somebody that's waking up in the morning, going into their place to try and make some money to feed their family and send their kids to school? You know, if I go into a place and I don't have a good experience, and yes, it's happened, and I didn't post about it. But if I posted a negative review about a place that I didn't enjoy, and you saw it online and decided not to even try them because you saw that it was a bad review, what happens if you would have gone in there and loved it? And now I've discouraged you from trying a place that you might have loved. And now I'm taking money out of the pocket of someone that's working hard that probably has a customer base that loves that food or loves the way that it's done. Maybe I just had a bad night, or maybe I just wasn't in a good mood. I like to create content. There's a lot of people that go out there that don't like to listen. I'm an older guy. I hate getting in front of the camera. I don't like the way I video. I don't like the way I look on video. I don't like my voice on video. I'm probably my biggest critic. Aside from my wife. My wife can't stand my videos. My wife barely even watches them. She actually thinks watching other people eat food is weird. And I'll tell you a funny story. So we were on the couch one night. I'm sitting there watching her scroll through her phone, and I hear my video come on. And within 3 seconds, she scrolled right past it. And I looked at her and I go, "Is that my video?" And she goes, "I don't know." I go, "You're my wife. Like, the least you could do is just watch my video and give me a like." I'm like, "This is crazy." And she's like, "Okay, whatever." But she can't stand my videos. And I'm very critical of my own videos as well. Like, I always think I did it wrong. I always think I didn't do a good job. It's very difficult to film yourself. So a lot of people go out there and they show the restaurant, and they show the food, and they put some music behind it. Voiceovers are not easy. What people don't understand is, like, I don't just go into a restaurant, shoot some videos, go home, slap it together, and then throw it on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. Editing takes a lot of time. If I go into a place, I'm there for 2.5 hours, shooting the food. I also like, my style is.
So you edit your own?
I edit my own.
Oh, dang. Okay. So a lot of people just hand it off to an editor.
No, I'm a one man, but this is not a career for me. I sit at night and edit a video. Sometimes it takes a week. Voiceovers. I have a DJ. I have a microphone. I use that. But I like to tell a story when I do a video and when I go into a place, because years ago there was newspapers, penny savers. How does a restaurant advertise now? You open a new restaurant. How do you reach people? Who picks up a newspaper or a magazine anymore to figure out where you want to go? It's all social media now. Social media is the new and the only way anybody can advertise for anywhere. We don't read the paper. We don't go. How do you reach people? How do you get people to see your place and want to get in? That's why I say I think South Florida, especially this area, is a little bit behind, because the big restaurants in New York, they're run by the old, like, nightclub promoters. A lot of these big places, they're run by, like, old school nightclub promoters who understand, how to reach the masses.
So a lot of those promoters, they went into, like, social media management, and they've become big companies, because I know that when you look at a New York market, LA market, they're ran by huge social media companies that literally analyze every little thing, and they want to make sure that every little thing that's in that ad is going to appeal, and it's not going to like look in any way, won't make your company look in any way like bad, or
Yeah.
so they'll literally be hyper critical of every little thing, right? You're going in there, how can I give the viewer the feeling of being here,
Yeah.
the atmosphere, the food, the service.
And food is just more than just food, like,
Yeah.
who sees a good, listen, when we do these things, like if I take a picture or a video, a burger's a burger,
Yeah.
a taco's a taco, a piece of pizza is a piece of pizza, like anybody can make it look good.
Right.
How many people watch a Burger King commercial, and look at a Whopper on the TV screen and then go into Burger King and be like, this isn't what it looks like. Like it's
That's what Tanya does too. She literally would sit here and be like, oh, they give us the background on the restaurant. The background story is what people want to know.
correct.
People want to know, who are you? Where are you from? Like, what's your food about? Like, what's the story behind the food, the recipes,
Exactly.
Yeah.
People buy from people. People
Yeah.
want to be seen and heard. And so when I go in, I like to incorporate a lot of interviews with the owners or the managers or the people that matter in the place, even if it's a longtime employee, about when they started the restaurant, how long they've been doing it for, what's the good parts, what's the bad parts, what drives them to do what they do. Um, and then I also like to get a lot of history from them, and I extract a lot of audio and I use their own words, because again, me and my own words, just going like, okay, so I went to this place and it was really good and their fries were amazing and they use truffle oil, or they use fresh imported mozzarella. It's just words, and it's me telling people, but when it's you and it's your passion, I think it comes across a little bit differently. So I like to do a lot of extracted audio where I'm using, their own words in my reel. So it's not only introducing the people that are there, but it's also introducing their food. Makes my job a little bit more challenging because obviously, with editing, extracting audio and taking out the, the breaths and, making it sound good and come together it takes time. You go and you spend 2 hours shooting. It's not as fun as people think. It's not like you're there with your
It's
friends.
work.
It's not Friday night where you're hanging out, having a couple of drinks and
You're
eating
not
some good
relaxing
food.
there.
We're shooting. We're talking about things, like which dish do you want when? How do you want it to come out? And then it comes out and the food's on the table and it's getting cold while you're trying to set it up the right way or set up the camera. Or you do a take and you don't like it and you want to do it again. Typically we're eating lukewarm or cold food by the time we're done. We're spending 2 hours filming, not really enjoy. I mean, obviously we enjoy what we do, but like not like a Friday night when you're out with your friends where we're not enjoying the meal. And then you come home and you have to upload them and you load them onto your computer and then you have to pull them into CapCut or InShot or whatever editing app you're using. And then you have to start clipping them down and reducing. I don't like this clip. I like this part of this clip. Then you add in voiceovers and extracted audio. It's a process.
So you're doing it as a production.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the younger, generation that's doing what you're doing, they do a run and gun style.
Yeah.
They're not worried about their audio. They're not worried about anything. They're using their phone. They're using, which is fine. You can use your phone.
Yeah.
But they're not really worried about the background noise and the hustle and bustle, and they're just shooting. I don't even think that they're even aware of it.
Yeah.
But you're thinking about everything.
Yeah. Probably one of the best things
Yeah.
I bought was I use my phone. I've used the camera before. One of my good friends who I met, we had a great crew. This guy, Chris at Good Bites. Absolutely tremendous. I met him when he maybe had 500 or 1,000 followers. And I just liked his style. And I just said, why don't we do a collab together? And, I took one look at him and I'm like, you're going to blow up. But it was, like me, Chris, Val, Feed You New Yorker, and another good friend of mine, this guy, Guillermo from the Fork in New York. We did a lot of group stuff together. Chris used the camera, and we sometimes compared, and he would use a professional camera and then use his phone. These days, an iPhone does everything you need it to do, unless you're a production company where you're using major cameras and stuff like that. But shooting food, you're not going to notice really a difference in video for what what I do. Whether you're using professional cameras, the probably the best thing that I bought was the DJI microphone.
Hmm.
It's like $350 or $400, but
We got those, yeah.
it's amazing. Like no dongle, nothing hanging, plugs right into the phone, clips on, magnets on, noise cancellation. It's absolutely fantastic. So that was probably one of my favorite purchases.
Those are game changers.
They really are.
Absolutely.
But I like to tell the story because as the viewer, and like I said, anybody could make a taco look good,
Right.
or a cocktail. Why go? New York's a little bit different. Sarasota, Florida, everything's a little bit more spread out. Everyone has their favorite places, or they go to what's local to them. In New York, there's a pizza place on every corner. Every town has everything you could possibly want, which is what makes New York so great. But when I'm talking to these guys and they ask me to come in and I'm talking to them, what makes your pizza better than somebody else's? Why? It's the people. It's your story. It's why do you come in the morning? Why do you do what you do? Gaetano and Jordan from, Gaetano's, who's third generation or whatever, doing pizza and teaching his son, telling the story of what people do is why I think those videos do so well. And unfortunately, these days, I'm sure we're all kind of subject to the gods of social media and their ever-changing algorithms, which I can't stand, to be honest with you. We're at the whim and the mercy of, social media algorithms, which are constantly changing. Is 9 o'clock in the morning the right time to post? Is 10 o'clock in the morning? What music, trending audio? I wish it was kind of how it used to be, where you just put a video out, and if people liked it, it did well.
That's right.
Now you gotta kind of try and catch the wave at the right time,
and it's all secret.
It's all secret,
and they don't tell you.
And by the time you actually figure out a good schedule of what to do, they change it on you.
Right.
Is it into? I think years ago, a long time ago, social media used to be like a sequence of when you posted.
Right.
Almost like a timeline. If I posted and then you posted, mine's here, yours is there. And now it's, in the first 5 minutes, if it's watched, it gets sent out to other people, and just the way that just the way that it works, I think is very unfavorable. Which is why I personally think, and I don't know, viewers could tell me what they agree or disagree. I think TikTok is way more favorable to people doing almost anything because of the way that their algorithm is. Where I think it's more favorable to content creators.
Okay.
In my personal opinion. And I think TikTok is a little bit more relevant than Instagram these days because of, anybody could get out there and post a video. And I think that TikTok gives you a better shot for anybody to be seen than Instagram does. And I've been having a ton of issues lately with Instagram. I'm independent. I don't get paid. I'm not hired to come into somebody's restaurant to tell everybody that it's great when it's really not, and my last couple of videos actually got flagged for not disclosing paid partnership when it wasn't in a paid partnership. And what happens is then I have to appeal it. I win the appeal because I'm right. And then it gets reinstated, but the damage is already done. And that's what the social media platforms don't realize or understand is once you mess with a video, the damage is already done. When you post, you have a certain amount of time to really reach, to catch the wave.
The maximum.
And if you catch the wave, then it spins and it sends to, and then it gets to because that's the goal, right? If you have 500 followers, 1,000 followers, 50,000 followers, your followers are going to typically see your work. In order to grow your account, in order to reach others,
it's got to be recommended to new people.
It's got to hit the For You page. And the only way to hit your For You page is up to the algorithm gods. If you hit the wave at the right time, somebody watches it. I think the way that it works now is like it gets sent out to a small audience. If you see it and you watch it and you like it, then it gets sent out to more people and more people and more people. If for any reason anything bumps that, especially initially, you're almost dead in the water. because it's not going to go anywhere because nobody's going to see it because they're just going to, as more people keep posting,
It gets buried.
it just gets buried, and then
Right.
no one ends up seeing it. And I have this conversation with my brothers all the time. They're like, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" Um, Lately, I've been doing a lot more talking on my videos. You know, my brothers have kind of wanted me to be more real or on camera. It's very difficult though. That makes it even harder because you don't have a voiceover to fix things up. You know, if you don't like something, you redo it. When you're talking on camera, you get one take. You know, you get one or two takes. Once you get home and you're done with your shoot, there's no going back. There's no, "Ah, I wish I would have done it differently. I wish I would have said this." Or when you're doing a voiceover, I could just delete it and redo it. Um,
Yeah, voiceover, you could do it over and over.
yeah, until you like the outcome. When you're
Right.
doing it, when the camera's on me and I'm the one sitting there going, you know, I'm lifting the dish or I'm trying to show what I'm eating or I'm talking about what I'm doing here. There's no do-overs once you're done. You can't go home and go, "Ah, I should have said this or I should have said that or I should have done this or I should have done that." It's over for you. You know,
Right.
you have to roll with what you did. And, you know, I
I
get
feel you.
I
I
give
feel you.
listen, I give credit to guys that do it. Brooklyn Bites, Little Mo, you know, Cooge, you know, guys that have somebody that go and shoot with them. Sometimes I'm shooting by myself. I use a tripod.
It-
Yeah.
It's harder to bounce off of somebody
If
because you feel like you're just talking into a camera.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's more things I've shot that I haven't posted than I've actually like felt okay
Yeah.
about and threw it out there. So
Yeah.
I totally feel you on that.
And when you have a team, you get to bounce ideas off. Or you'd be like,
Yeah.
hey, Mike, what would be a good idea? I think if you did this, or I don't like the way this is framed. If I'm doing it by myself, what I get is
Yeah,
is,
what you walk away with exactly. You
that's it.
can't go back.
No.
Yeah, man. So you know what I want to do? I want to have you back at maybe like your 1 year anniversary here
Love to.
because I feel like you're going to evolve this a little bit more too. Because with the new lifestyle, new types of restaurants, you know, you're in a new environment. I think you're going to see things a little bit differently as you live
Yeah.
the new lifestyle you're living now. And I kind of want to like check in with you in about, 6 months,
Yeah, stay in touch and
7 months from now.
definitely. I got a couple of things. I know I've been talking with Agave Bandito in Waterside.
Mm-hmm.
I because everything's spread out, it's a little bit more difficult sometimes to just jump in and jump out. In New York, it's a little bit easier, when you only have to drive 5 minutes. Some of the places that I'd really like to get to, they're a little bit of a ways. So for me to plan a night, like I said, I'm a father. My sons are in sports. My younger son plays baseball as well. So for me to like figure out a night to like go and shoot, I'm due. I'm definitely due. I'd love to check out one of Tanya's places. I think it was one that she recently posted about that I think she handles their social media.
My mama.
My mama looks like, especially the story of them
We're
coming
going
here
there
from
Friday.
Italy. Are you?
Yeah.
You'll have to let me know if you like it.
Or no. Saturday.
Okay.
Saturday. I'm sorry. Yeah, we've got a dinner date with another couple. We're going to be
Nice.
going there. I haven't been there yet. So that was definitely one of my, and I'm going there off of her recommendation as
Okay.
well. So
Yeah, no, hearing their story that they came here from Italy, I'm very interested in checking that place out. And I know Agave Bandito. I like all food. I like everything. I know another big one. That I'm very interested in checking out is a place in Sarasota called Capo Pazzo.
mm-hmm.
It's a pizza place. Bunch of, I think, either New Yorkers or New Jersey that came down here. Look like they're doing some pretty interesting things. But I like everything. So as long as you got good food, I'd love to tell that story, and definitely looking forward to getting more involved in the in the food and restaurant scene here, trying different things, and I think I'm Smoky Bones, or I forgot the name of it, but a barbecue spot.
Are you talking about Smoke? SMOQ, I believe they spell it. On Anna Marie Island, Holmes Beach area?
No, this is in Bradenton, I think. I think it's a barbecue place in Bradenton. I forgot the name. The owner's son, Tyler, which happens to be my son's name, messaged me, and he's trying to set me up with his father, who's the owner of the place. Seems like it's a good family business of people that like doing Twisted. I think what's the place on Main Street? Twisted Pig, maybe. It's right across from Percoco's.
I think so.
I think it's the Twisted Pig. I know we were talking to them, and couple spots that I'd really love to go in, but they're just too busy. You know, like the solid, like there's a lot of people, there's a lot of everyone down here is transplants.
Yeah.
So, you know, like,
And if it's a good restaurant, they mob it.
they're busy. So,
Yeah.
you know, like spots like Michelangelo's, they're from Long Island. They're busy all the time. I go in there personally. I'm there every single week. And I said to the owner, I'm like, why don't we shoot a video? Like, I'd love to tell a story. They're
he's like, I don't need the marketing anyway.
they're kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, Jersey Girls Bagels. Jersey Girls Bagel, that's probably like the best New York bagel for down here. You know, like the owner's husband runs the social media, and I've been messaging him, but they're just so not into it.
You're making me hungry.
I'm starving.
It's time for lunch.
It definitely is, but I'd love to hit some of the New York, you know, like the you know, the New Yorkers that have moved down here, especially, and I'd love to hit if there are, you know, like Florida, Sarasota, like old, you know, like been here forever, you know, locations. I'd love to see, like, you know, spots that have been here for a really long time,
Definitely
not like
different.
a transplant, like, hey, moved down here from New York, open the pizza place. Like, I'd love to check out some, you know, some spots. So if anybody knows anything, definitely send recommendations.
Put it in the comments.
Put it in the comments. Tag them.
Tag them.
I don't like reaching out to restaurants. I feel like it's cheesy or corny. I don't like to promote myself. In New York, where I'm, you know, my biggest following is, if I commented on somebody else's post that a place looked good, I'm typically going to probably get a message, you know, hey, we'd love to have you in. I don't like trying to promote myself where I'm like, hey, reaching out to a restaurant, hey, I'd love to come do a video for you.
You don't have to do that anymore.
I mean, I'm new to Florida, so, you know, I'm especially new to this area, so I feel like I'm not known. You know, so I don't think that I get that kind of, you know, like, oh, I'd love to have this guy in here. Hopefully people look at my page and look at my work and, you know, take social media a little bit more seriously, especially if they're not into it right now, you know, whether they have a PR team, you know, a social management team, or they're just trying to, you know, run a restaurant. Social media is it, you know, like that's how you reach people. You know, if you're looking to increase your business, if you're looking to get your name and what you're doing out there, look for local pages. Look for
100%. Come in here and shoot in the studio.
That's
we got
right.
the studio here. We built this out. We sunk our own money into this just so we could do this, bring people in like you know, bring in, if you're a restaurant owner, come on in, have a seat with me or with Mike, and we'll feature you. If you do a good job and you know, you're doing a good work in the area, why not?
Yeah, this is a very, very cool setup. Anybody who wants to be on a camera or tell their story, this is a very cool place.
Thank you so much.
I love the setup. This equipment is fantastic. I love the format, and Sunbiz Studios. This is a great setup. Good for you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining me and Mike with Selective Eats. We're going to have him back in the studio in about 6 to 7 months. Once you hit your one, I want to hear what you have to say after your 1 year marker here. So I want to thank you again for coming in, man. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you having me. This was my first podcast. I was really looking forward to it.
Come back anytime. If you want to book a time, you're always welcome back.
Sounds good. Stay in touch, and I'll come anytime you want.
All right. We'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for spending this time with us. I know it's a little bit of an extra lengthy video podcast, but I thought it was a pretty good conversation. So we'll put it out there.
That's all we can do.
Raw.
Yes. If you like it, you like it. Hopefully you do.
Take care.